Welcome to this week's edition of The Happy Grown Up, your GPS guide to take you through the opportunities, challenges, and joy to be found in the second half of our lives. In 2019, I had just published a new book called The Looks of Love, and I was lucky enough to be invited to be a guest speaker on a transatlantic crossing on the Queen Mary 2. In fact, all the speakers on the voyage had a connection to fashion. Some of them I knew, some I didn't. And I was asked to speak 3 times, twice in reference to the book, but I also agreed to submit to a Q&A about my career. And I was told that the interviewer for the Q&A was going to be the gentleman who was heading up Mr. Porter, the online luxury shopping site for men that, along with its better half, so to speak, Net-a-Porter, was radically redefining how to sell high-end clothing on the internet. I don't really love talking about myself, which is why most of my books are about stuff others have done. But 5 minutes into speaking with Jeremy Langmead, I forgot about narcissism. I forgot about several hundred people in the audience. Instead, I was having a delightful conversation with a man who was witty, quick, inquisitive, with just enough attitude to seduce you into leaning in for the next sharp insight. And we have been long-distance friends ever since. I am tickled to have Jeremy with me today because he has what I think is a fascinating life. Prior to Mr. Porter, Jeremy was the editor of the groundbreaking Interiors magazine Wallpaper, and then the British edition of Esquire. He was also a regular contributor to the Times of London, where he writes with honesty and cheekiness. He is an expert on style, specifically on how men can look and feel their best. When it comes to sartorial splendor on social media, it skews heavily towards women. What men get are 2 million videos of genetically blessed young men working out doing the same 6 exercises per body part that we've known about for 30 years. Jeremy, however, knows what to do when you look in the mirror and when you look in your closet. He also has a diverse personal life. Married to a woman in his youth, he fathered 2 sons, and then at 48, finding love with his husband, Simon Rayner, who recently adopted a baby girl. He was also diagnosed several years ago with prostate cancer. And rather than quake in the corner, chose to create a podcast called How Long Have You Got? Well, I sure hope it's a lot more, because I really like and admire Jeremy Langmead, and I can't wait for you to meet him.
Thank you, Hal. That was such a kind intro, much undeserved on my behalf, but thank you so much. So it's weird that we met on the cruise, which sort of sounds wrong, doesn't it? But it was a boat, not a cruising ground that we met on.
Yeah. It was, and they were very specific about it not being called a cruise. It had to be called a crossing. Yeah, every time you use the word like cruise, they would like stop and miss a beat.
So true. But it was a weird cruise because we didn't stop anywhere, so you just looked out of the window. And
that's why they call it a crossing, because you can't get off that boat.
Yeah,
you're there for 8 days.
Well, luckily we liked each other and we had some fun.
So you become this known expert on style for men. When did you first realize this was either an obsession or a fascination for you?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I think I can, as far back as I can remember, I can care about looking, caring about myself, which was vanity rather than being interested in dressing. So it must have come from a huge insecurity. But then I decided, well, I'm going to turn this insecurity to an advantage, and let's see if a insecurity such as this can have a revenue stream. So let's turn vanity into a profit. But actually, I studied. Like lots of people, it was reading magazines when I was a teenager, and magazines like The Face and Blitz and all those club magazines, and all these people were having a much more fun life than I was out in the countryside. They were going to these amazing clubs. And I thought, I want to be a part of that. And I read the captions to the photographs, and nearly everyone I was looking at the pictures of and admired the crazy outfits they were wearing, they all were going to a college called St. Martin's School of Art in London. So I thought, that's where I need to go. So that's where I went. And that's when I studied fashion. Had no desire to be a fashion designer. I just wanted to go to nightclubs.
Okay. But what did you take away from St. Martin's, though?
Well,
besides knowing which bars to go to in London.
Well, that was more or less it. After the first year, I realized I didn't want to be a fashion designer, and sewing was far too complex and repetitive, and I wasn't very good at it. So furious with that. But you could specialize in a fashion journalism part of the degree. So that's what I did. So I joined the fashion journalism course, which is part of the fashion course. And then rather rudely, the tutors left and they didn't replace them for a year or two. So I literally did just go night clubbing and and then from watching and reading and observing, which is such a big part of what we do, such an important part of what we do. And then I was really lucky in the fact that we got to do an internship for a year, and I did the Daily Telegraph newspaper in London, Cosmopolitan magazine, and then ended up working as the fashion assistant to a man called Marcus von Ackermann, and he was the men's editor of British Vogue. So that's sort of where the whole menswear thing began, by mistake, by accident.
Well, very often that's how many careers have happened.
True.
You know, my first job in fashion was men's style editor of the New York Times.
Wow.
I mean, came from out of nowhere.
The
But
best thing
I'm
to
very
do. Yeah.
Yeah, very often they do. But as you were his assistant, what part of the style and the observation of looking at men fascinated you most? Or what truly intrigued you?
Well, I think Marcus was because Vogue in the UK had a men's section, which he was the editor of, which it doesn't have anymore, sadly. But this was before GQ magazine had launched in the UK. But Marcus was very into sort of bright colours and all the clothes that you see on the catwalks, but you really see people wearing. And it was just this dazzling world of escape. And I think early in my life, fashion to me presented an escape. And then later, as I got older, it presented as a uniform. Not a uniform I didn't like, one I rather embraced, but it sort of started off as rebellious, and then it almost became a wonderful place to hide in, whether you're in a boardroom or a bar. You know, fashion could be your friend if you adapted it in the right way.
How much do you think what somebody is wearing telegraphs how people perceive them?
On the whole, quite a lot. I mean, obviously, there are people who look appalling and are wonderful, and I admire the people who don't care about how they look. Actually, I envy them. It must be so much more relaxing, so less expensive. So I wish I was that person. But
I don't believe them.
Well, sometimes it's a studied dishevel, isn't it? And so that's as much an actor to put on as anything else. But
it's a choice.
It does tell a lot about people. And I think what's lovely today is, of course, people are so more expressive about what they wear in menswear, and it's been wonderful to witness that happening. But what I also think is important about how you dress is how much you respect other people. And I think sometimes the way you dress has to be true to you, but sometimes you have to dress to make other people feel comfortable with you, because it's about us. And sometimes that might mean not always wearing what you totally want to wear, but you want the other person to feel comfortable. Which is sort of, not everyone agrees with me, but I think that the biggest respect and the biggest politeness is to make someone feel comfortable. So without betraying yourself, make them feel that they're part of your world, which sometimes means taking off a tie or putting on a tie, or whatever, or taking off a skirt or putting on a skirt. I wore so many skirts when I was at Central St. Martin's, and I'm so happy to see men are wearing them again. They are actually very practical, but I wouldn't wear a skirt to a boardroom meeting with certain people.
Oh no, I was at the theater last night for a dance recital, and the guy in front of me was wearing a spaghetti strap, long pleated black gown.
Amazing.
And he was in his own best life.
Amazing. It's so wonderful to see this happen. You know, you and I have seen so many changes in men's how people can express their sexuality and how they need to dress and what society will take. And it's just amazing to see what's happening now, and it really is quite joyous.
When men are older, okay, we're both over 50. How much of those challenges, or basically how adventurous can you be when you get older?
I think that is entirely up to you and how you feel and what makes you feel comfortable, which I know is a cop-out question, but I think it's true. So I dress a lot more conservatively now. But there was someone I was seeing in the street, and he must have been in his 70s, and he had silver hair, which I love, always love silver hair. And he just looked confident with himself in a charming way, not in a pretentious way. He was head to toe in Rick Owens, the baggy trouser shorts with the low crotch and the boots, and he just looked amazing because he owned it. So I think it really does depend on who you are and how you own it and what you want to wear. Sometimes I want to just disappear into the background. Sometimes I want to, stick out a bit more. Depends on the mood.
Older guys, I mean, younger men right now are, of course, incredibly adventurous, but guys who are older, who are used to basically people who we would call happy grown-ups, basically their uniform was that suit and that tie. And the great thing about a suit is you don't have to think. It always matches.
It's a gift, yeah.
How does somebody who is older cultivate a sense of individuality when they get dressed?
Well, it's a good question. It's really nice to see how much that's changing too. And if you look, I mean, I'm using the term older here loosely, but if you look at Robert Downey Jr. or Brad Pitt or Daniel Craig recently, they're all suddenly bringing quite pieces into their wardrobe that you wouldn't expect them to wear. And Daniel Craig in Loewe, and then Brad Pitt in those checkerboard trousers. So I think men, as they get older, are beginning to bring a few different items into their wardrobes that they wouldn't have before. The balance to me is getting it right between, I love this, and I think it looks good on me and I'm going to rock it, but you don't want to look as if you're being, hey, I'm Mr. Fun Guy. So it's getting the balance right, isn't it? But guys are, and that's usually with color, because I think color looks great on you as you get older. Navy's kinder than black, but bright primary color. Here I'm sinking away in a baggy blue sweater. But so many guys, wearing pop of orange or bright pink, and those colors look good. I mean, they put some color into your skin, or if you want it to, they distract from your face because everyone's looking at the color of your jumper, not the rest of you. So there's so many different tricks that bring a bit of vitality into your wardrobe that perhaps we didn't wear before, but you still can. Or just the cut or something.
Are there things that you wear now that you wouldn't have worn like 15 years ago, or the things that you wore 15 years ago that you wouldn't dare wear now?
Yes, I am wearing a lot more color, I just suddenly like wearing bright colors. I think also happy grown up. It's just they're quite joyful, aren't they? Bright. They make you feel happier. They make you look happier. People will react to color well, I think, on the whole. I mean, I don't want to, look like a crazy traffic light, but it brings a bit of joy into the world. So I would say I'm wearing a lot more color. I'm wearing a lot more baggy clothes now, after years and years and years of loving slim fit clothes, and suddenly I'm just wearing these sort of workwear trousers that were made for chefs, and I don't know if that's because I'm wanting to hide my body or it's just a different way of, I don't know.
I can't get into the baggier clothes. To me, it took so long to get men out of shapeless suits.
Well, this is true.
Into things that are fitted, and now you want them to reverse. And yes, women love to sort of, but they're used to throwing it up in the air and then starting with new. Guys, it's hard to move that needle for them, and you finally got them to a place where they can look as fit as they may actually be, and then you're going to throw all these, here, let's go with the drop shoulder and the triple pleats, and I just won't do it.
No, I can see that. I think what I quite like is that some of the items of clothing that were usually associated with older people, like elastic waistbands or drawstring waists, they're now fashionable, and that's great. You can have as many snacks as you want, and your trousers will not betray you. So some things, thank God, that we like have become fashionable too. But I agree with you about the shapeless things, but sometimes you just want your body not to be the focus and to hide it away, perhaps. And guys, I don't know about in the States, but they've stopped wearing those really, really tight jeans. I went round to someone's house yesterday, and one of the guys, lovely guy, he was wearing such tight jeans. I thought I would like to be able to imagine what's there rather than have to see it in front of my eyes quite so brazenly. Some of those jeans are a little too tight.
Well, yeah, they look like jeggings.
They do, yeah.
Really yeah.
Or someone's just been, sprayed blue while they weren't looking.
How do you help a guy reimagine themselves? Or you look in the closet and there's nothing but navy blue, gray, brown, and black. Women dress to be noticed. Men dress not to make a mistake.
Yeah, that's so true. But I think it's for the happy grown-ups, I think it's little things that make a big difference. There's a trend here at the moment. It's quite nice. These really brightly coloured sort of rugby shirts or polo shirts, obviously polo shirts. And if you put one of those under a navy blazer or under a coat, they just look great because it's pattern, it's colour, it's stripes, and it just makes everything pop a bit. Or instead of wearing a navy coat, you get them to wear a check coat, which are easier to buy now. You can get them at Uniqlo and they look great. Or it's just a pair of orange sneakers rather than a pair of brown or white sneakers, and I love the fact that Jude Law and actually I think maybe Mick Jagger, they'll wear a navy blazer which looks great, but they won't wear a shirt or a tie underneath it. They wear a t-shirt and then just a scarf that's sort of tucked in. Almost instead of a shirt, they wear a scarf, and that just makes it look a bit more contemporary and youthful. But it also looks sort of really smart. So it's just all these little tricks, isn't it?
Well, I think the fun thing is that women, let's say, Me Too movement had huge objections to being objectified. Men never complain about being objectified.
I have been waiting to be objectified all my life.
Exactly. I mean, you go on TikTok or Instagram Reels, and like I said, it's a never-ending parade of young guys working out.
I know.
And saying, "Look at me, look at me, look at me." But when you get older, I mean, you're less likely to do that. How do you still maintain that pride?
That's true. Because I was thinking, did you have a OnlyFans? Is that over in the States?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. So I was thinking about OnlyFans, and I was thinking, God, all these people, and I love the fact that they are owning what they're doing, and they're making money out of it. And I thought, well, I'm going to set up an OnlyFans account where they tip me to put on more layers, and I'll probably make more money that way. At the end of every day, I'll have 6 coats, 4 scarves, and 3 hats on. They'll be covering them up. But if it makes me some money, that's great. But it's just the confidence. But when I was at Mr. Porter, and I left 3-4 years ago, and we launched it 14 years ago. So a lot of change has happened in menswear. But very quickly after starting, when I started, it was all the preppy look, and that's what everyone was wearing. But quite quickly, we were selling really, really bright colors and lots of, pattern, bold print shirts. And I remember when the buyers were buying, I was thinking, these are not going to sell. And they flew out. Now, they partly flew out because color and pattern pops offline and people shopping on a smartphone, it shows up better. Right. But also, you go to the street or a restaurant or a shop, and still loads and loads of men are much braver than we sort of imagine, really. That pattern color, it really does, work well in retail.
Including older guys, you think?
Yeah. Absolutely. Look at Tim Blanks, who does, the business fashion magazine. He's always got his Hawaiian shirts on. And as I say, Daniel Crane that way. But I think everyone's getting a lot braver. And that's not just anecdotally, that's literally seeing, the bottom line when we were running Mr. Porter and what was selling. And I do think the internet and the digital age has really, really helped men be more adventurous and dress better, because as you alluded to earlier, we have terrible egos, and we can't pretend otherwise. And we're terrified of getting it wrong because we're quite fragile at the same time. Whereas online, you can see how other people are dressing, and you can ask anonymously questions about how to dress. And I think that's just made us a lot braver, because women sensibly ask each other for advice. Men of our generation
never ever talk about it.
I know.
Never.
So weird, isn't it? The weirdest thing is if you ever go to a wedding and you're all staying in the same hotel, and everyone comes down in the foyer ready to go to the wedding. All the women go, "Oh, you look amazing. Where's your dress from? I love that." The guys just go, "All right," nod. no mention of the fact they're all wearing clothes that they never normally wear. It's getting better, that conversation, but it's taken a while.
You talked about being very, very involved in skincare. And guys very often, especially when they're older, are kind of clueless. They wash their face with Dove soap and whatever their wife has in the cabinet, which isn't exactly the right way to go about it. Men can't wear makeup. Well, they should. I'll rephrase that. Men can wear makeup, but most men will not wear makeup. Yeah. So what do you do to take care of your skin now at age, whatever you are?
I've always been, because of the historic vanity, but I've always been sort of quite careful with my skin. So I've always sort of brought skin treatments, even when they were, easy to get, or even suggested I'd use women's moisturizers and serums, and really try to I think it's so important to look after your skin. I mean, as you get older, that little bit of skin on top of your sweater is the only bit of skin that most people see, sadly. So look after it as much as you can. But I don't like it when people try to look younger, because that's just too tiring, and who cares? I just like it when people look after their skin, because it'll make them feel better. Also, men don't wear enough SPF, and SPF 50 is what we should all be wearing every day. And that's about protecting your skin from pollution and UV rays, which can give you skin cancer. And skin cancer amongst men as they get older is quite high. And that's because we've never protected our skin. So we never bought products that had UV protection in them. So I think skincare is really important if you care about your skin, but I don't see why you wouldn't care about your skin, because it's a health thing as well as a visual thing.
Do you have a morning ritual?
I do. I use a cleanser every other day, not too often. And
you can mention brands if you like.
Yeah. Well, I use a guy called Dr. David Jack, So I think for men, and again, I'm sort of generalizing, but we kind of want it needs to be easy, it needs to be simple, otherwise we just get bored. And he has arranged, and it's called Good Morning, which you think, I put that on in the morning, that's easy, with my sun protection included in it. And then there's an all day long, and then there's a good night. And I put that one on at night. And that's, even without my glasses, I can see which is which, when to put it on. So that's what I use. And I think you don't need a complicated skin routine. You just need to protect your skin, nourish your skin, and heal your skin overnight, which we know, which is what something with actives in it. But that's all you need to do. But it's really important to look after your skin on so many levels, and it's cheaper than buying a new outfit in the long run.
Are there things that men should stay away from?
Well, I don't want to upset loads of people with moisturizer, but if you're just buying a plain moisturizer, don't stay away from it, but check if there's nothing else in it. It's probably not worth using, just to save you some money. A moisturizer by itself doesn't really do anything to your skin. If you think about, you're just putting a bit of basically creamy water on your skin. That's lovely. It feels nice, but it won't do anything. You need a serum, and you need something that has active ingredients, as they call it.
You mean like retinol?
Exactly. Retinol at night, and then a serum in the morning, and it'll look after you. But men still aren't doing that. There's a long way for us to go. I don't know why men's skincare is not taken off as much as it has. I find it really puzzling, because we do care about, as you said, even the young guys, they're all working out and they're posting pictures. And actually, they're probably better at adopting skin regimes than some of the older guys. But yeah,
they are.
They are. Change, yeah.
Guys, sometimes they're lucky that when you shave, you exfoliate, because otherwise they would never do it.
No.
But that idea that, personal care is essential. But also, speaking of personal care, several years ago, you went to the doctor for your checkup, and you were diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Yeah. That was weird. I had no symptoms at all. So it was completely unexpected. It was just a blood test. And then I thought, oh, well, it's prostate cancer. Lots of guys have them. Lots of people can live with it and die of something else by the time it comes to fruition. But typical me, it was an aggressive high-grade prostate cancer. So it wasn't one of those that, So, that was a huge, obviously, it was a big shock. I didn't even really know anything about prostate, what it did, what it was for. So it was that was quite a lot. And I had surgery, and then it went and it came back, and then I had radiotherapy, and I went a hormone therapy treatment, and I just started. And so there's many side effects, many boring things to it. But someone once said to me, if you're having treatment, it means you're still alive, so be grateful. So I try not to complain about the treatments. And someone else said, and I was thinking about this, it might even be you who said it to me, but not everyone has the luxury of getting old or older. And
it was me.
It was you, wasn't it?
It was me. Yes.
I think it was when we were on the on the ship. Are we allowed to go? Yeah. I think, and as always resonated with me when you said that. It was you. I thought it was. And I've told so many people. Of course, I pretend I made that up, not you. But not true.
You can have it. It's okay.
But they were some of the wisest words I've ever heard as you get older. And they're so true. And I quote them often, actually.
Well, in fact, obviously, that's what led you to do the podcast with, unfortunately, your friend who recently passed away. How much time do you have left, right?
How long have you got? Yeah.
How long have you got?
We wanted to be really honest and, no holds barred.
So what was your goal there in creating this? And especially, yes, prostate cancer affects people of all ages, but especially people who are older. It's much more common.
That absolutely true. And again, like talking about clothes, like talking about skincare, we don't talk about these things with each other. And why didn't I know what prostate was? Why didn't I know about prostate cancer? I was diagnosed when I was 56. I should have known about it. If you're over 50, you should, get tested for it. And I wrote a big piece about my diagnosis and my experience at that time for the Times newspaper in London. And I
read it, yeah.
And I had, thank you. And I had so many messages from men, mostly middle-aged guys, obviously. And it was interesting. You could tell how old the person was from the platform they messaged you on. So a lot of messages about it on LinkedIn, which is amazing. So obviously that's what your middle-aged businessman uses as his messaging platform. But it was very humbling that so many men I'd never met and never would meet had shared their very personal stories. Some had good endings, some did not, or were about not to be. And I was very humbled, but also realized that these guys are contacting me and they don't know me. They should be able to talk to each other about this. They should be able to talk about their peer groups about this. And it can be embarrassing for people because unfortunately the treatment for prostate cancer can have some really debilitating side effects. Because if you have the surgery, such as me, you can have erectile dysfunction temporarily or for life. You can have urinary problems and need to wear pads temporarily or for life. It's the side effects that can be almost worse than the cancer itself. So
just for clarification, pants on your side of the ocean means underwear.
Yeah, exactly.
Underwear.
Yeah, because obviously prostate's attached to your bladder, so when it's removed, and the nerve function could impair your chances of having an erection, also your bladder control. So there's a lot of men who have that surgery and then have the rest of their lives are dealing with those problems. Thank God, my surgeons spared my urinary one, so I haven't had that problem, so I can't speak on behalf of those people, but 1 in 3 men does have a problem. And so your life changes in many ways, or you can't have sex because you can't get an erection, and also when you're on the hormone treatment that I'm on, that takes away any sexual desire. I have no interest in having sex, and that's a really weird thing for many men.
Yep.
To not want to have sex. I mean, in some ways think, oh, that's relaxing, but in some ways think that's super weird. So that's why men don't talk about these things, because it's embarrassing, they believe. So that's why with my friend Sarah, who had a incurable breast cancer, we thought, let's just talk about these things. And I decided I can either hide away, which is not wrong. People should do what they feel comfortable with when they've been diagnosed with cancer, or let's just try and get some advantages out of this very boring, annoying thing that's happened to me. And so I decided to, use my platforms, which I was very lucky to have, to share information, advice, and tips.
What did you learn from the podcast itself based on the feedback that you got?
It sounds corny, but first of all, it's always nice to be reminded how many wonderful, kind, selfless, and strong and inspiring people there are out there who are going through all sorts of different illnesses and get on with it. And I'm not going to say don't complain, because people should complain because it's healthy, but who are so generous with what's happened to them and sharing that with others. And so many people who are strong show such courage. And so it was, and I include you in that, Hal, because you've been so courageous and uncomplaining about what you've been going through. But it was almost made me grateful to be in that community, because I met and heard from so many wonderful people. And I really mean that. And I hate saying kind things. It goes against the better part of my nature. But
that's so British. Oh, God.
That so British. Changed me. But also you just learn about so much. You can share, because when you get cancer, you get your leaflets and the oncologists tell you these things, and or whatever illness you've gotten, but they never really tell you. And you get the hormone therapy treatment, which no one really knows what it is, and it sounds quite innocuous, but actually it's a real but they don't really tell you. And you look at the side effects, and they're so vague because no pharmaceutical company wants to put people off or get themselves into trouble. So often it's just people sharing their insights and sharing the reactions they've had to different treatments. And whether it's Instagram or internet forums, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn, that community is so generous in sharing information and advice. So it was being useful and heartwarming at the same time, I would say.
Besides the lack of sexual desire, how much of your life did prostate cancer take over, or were you able to section it and move on to other things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I sort of still ponder that. Well, obviously initially I had the surgery, so then it's a few months out, but that's fine. And then when it came back, I did the radiotherapy, which is 7 weeks where you have radiotherapy every single day, and that was quite a thing, but that was fine. Everyone was so nice. The thing I hate the most actually is the hormone therapy treatment I'm on now, and so they've just changed it. And because I'm, I can't help but laugh when I say it, because in the hospital terms, I'm young. I mean, I'm 59. I love hospitals. It's the only place I'm young. So they say, Jeremy, because you're young, your testosterone levels will be high, and the hormone therapy treatment takes out your testosterone, it blocks it.
Right, exactly.
That's what feeds the prostate cancer. So when you're younger, you produce more testosterone, so the reactions you have, the side effects are greater. So I really hated one. So they just put me on another one. And I was getting the train back from the hospital in London the other day, and I was reading the pills I've got to take, the side effects. And I mean, you've written, it will say fast weight gain, fatigue, depression, And then one of them said, you will grow breasts. And you thought, oh, lovely, great, just what I wanted. But then the oncologist says to me, don't worry, we've got another pill called tamoxifen, which is actually a breast cancer drug. Take this and that will stop you growing breasts. And you think, oh, good. Then you read that, and then that says skin rashes, depression, fatigue. So it's a side effect. So they do take away your energy. And I think the thing I've found hardest, it hasn't stopped me doing a lot of things, but it's hard to commit because you don't know whether you're going to be having another, I don't know, in June, I'll know whether the hormone therapy's worked or not, but then I might have to do chemo, or I might have to do something else, or I might not. So it's really hard to commit to things because you never know what's around the corner. And I find that the hardest bit of this whole process.
How much but I mean, obviously you're dealing with it in the same way that, I deal with my challenges here too, but how much of it is in the front of your brain, or how are you able, if not, how are you able to move it to some manageable place and go forward with the rest of your activities in your life?
Yeah, good question. Well, luckily I have a really short attention span, Hal, so I often forget I've got cancer because I've got no memory. That's the nice thing about getting older, you forget things, and sometimes you forget things you don't want to remember. So that helps. And I think this year, obviously, doing the podcast was a very cathartic thing to do and a very useful thing to do. But it was also quite draining because you are sharing so many stories from other people. And it's really wonderful to hear those stories, but you worry about them, you think about them. I get so many emails every day from people who've read a piece I've written or listened to the podcast, sharing their story. And some of them are quite grueling stories. And I'm so flattered they've written to me, but you can't not reply. So so it's quite hard to put aside sometimes. And as you mentioned, my friend Sarah, who I did the podcast with, died at the age of 38 recently, very recently. And that's been very hard to deal with, I would say. Bereavement's not something I've had to deal with too much. And I found that really tricky. But I think next year my plan is to try to think about cancer less and just get on with stuff. Be less kind. That's my plan for next year.
Less kind?
Kindness. Being kind is really tiring and the pay is terrible. That's my advice.
We'll write that one down. You had a major shift halfway through your life. You were married to a woman, and you had two children, two boys who are now I think one's 30. And
yeah, they're older than me. Isn't that weird?
And then at 48, you met Simon.
Yeah.
What kind of shift in your head?
Oh, there's been so many shifts in my head. So many shifts in my head. It's exhausting. It's like a brain tsunami. Well, I mean, I was gay when I was young, gay at St. Martin's, and had lots of boyfriends. Too many boyfriends, maybe. But then I started my job, and I was a beautiful, clever, funny woman called India, and I fell in love with her. And I never really, and it sounds like a cop-out, but it's true. I think you have you're mostly one sexuality or another, I think, although some people seem to be purely bisexual. I tend to think you veer more one way than the other.
I think so too, but okay.
But sometimes you just fall in love with someone you're not expecting to. And I was not expecting to or looking to. I had a boyfriend when I met my future wife, but she just, boom, something happened. And I fell in love with her. And the romance started on a holiday. And it was meant to be a group of us, but for various reasons, it was just the two of us. And the holiday romance started. And when we were heading back, we're going to go back from Morocco back to London. And we said, wouldn't it be funny if we told everyone we got engaged? I mean, people would have been amazed that we were going out with each other. And so we threw a pretend engagement party just to see everyone's reaction for fun. And then that became a reality. Then we did get engaged. And then we thought, oh, that's not a joke. We actually are in love. And then we got married. And I think the nice thing about being young, and this comes back to you again when you're older, the nice thing about being young is you don't think about things too much. You just go for it. And the best things often happen if I'd really thought about it, I might have worried. And then when India was pregnant, we thought, oh my God, but we're too young to be parents. Oh, this will be hilarious. We'll have a child. Who would have thought? If I thought about it again, maybe we wouldn't have. And then we had another one. And I'm so glad that the rashness of youth is rather a wonderful thing. But then I think when you get older, you care less what people think. So you have that same spirit, but it comes from a different direction. But I think other people found it harder than me when I changed the gender of the people I was marrying. I think also I was quite excited that when after our marriage finished and I was gay again and I was dating Simon, and I know this sounds terrible, but having been married, I thought, oh, great, now I go out with guys only. At least I'll never have to get married again or have children again. And then the world caught up with me, and then we're allowed to get married, which of course is amazing. But on my micro level, it wasn't in the plan. And when Simon very kindly asked me to marry him, I couldn't say it's illegal. I had to say yes. and gay men can have babies too, which is amazing, but wasn't how it was when I was younger.
Well, I read the essay that you wrote in Esquire,
Right.
And you talked about the child, and 5 years ago, Simon adopted.
Oh yeah.
A girl. Now, and like you said in the essay that you weren't going to be a father, you were going to be the grumpy guy sitting in the corner.
Yeah, I stuck with that.
You have stuck with
yeah,
that?
yeah, that worked out. He had a child with a friend of his, his one of his close friends, and they've had the most beautiful daughter. And I was against it, and I was against it because I'd had two children, and they were, at that time in their mid-20s. And having children, it can be the biggest gift ever, and for me it was. But also, you worry about them, the stress of children. There's enough to worry about. What am I going to wear tomorrow? And I have to worry about children too. So I just thought I can't go through that love and stress that you have for a child again, which is why I didn't want to have children again. So Simon found a clever way of having a child without me, which we both agreed on. and so he's happy and I'm happy. And when she comes and stays, I'm just daddy's grumpy friend upstairs.
And what about your two sons? You're close to them?
I am. Yes, they are adorable. They have absolutely no respect for me whatsoever. They call me Pops or Jez. And they are really tall. They're 6'4", both of them, and I'm 5'9". So whenever I see them, whenever I try and tell them off or tell them what to do, they just pat me on the head and go, "All right, Pops, calm down." I have no authority there whatsoever. But I think what's so nice about them is they're naughty, funny, clever, charming, lovely, and kind. And messy and dirty, but they bring you down to earth. Is the good thing about them, and also you see things through different eyes when you see it through their eyes. It gives you a glimpse of the world that's happening that you might not see every day in the life that you're having.
Well, I think it's, and so many of the people who I've talked to for this podcast have said the same thing, that as you get older, it's almost essential that you develop a circle of younger friends. Because you may not agree with everything they do or think, but the thing is, it gives you another perspective.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And actually, I remember a long time ago, and I used to work at the Sunday Times, and I edited the style supplement. And the editor of the Sunday Times, who was a lot older than me, but he used to get the culture editor, which was the art section of the Sunday Times, each week to give him a list of books and music he should know about and films. And he would listen to the CDs, as it was then, just so he knew what everyone was listening to. He didn't like that music necessarily, but he wanted to be in touch because he was the editor of a newspaper. And I always thought that was a very clever approach to.
In terms of, let's say, despite the change in sex of your partner, you fell in love with India when you were in your 20s. You basically have been with Simon in your 50s. How is love or relationships different 3 decades later?
Ooh. Well, yeah, that's very different. No, it is very different. That's a really good whole question. I think with as you get older, you get more stuck in your ways. I think sounds like a negative. You get more comfortable about what you like and what you don't like, is a better way of putting it. And so sometimes compromise can be trickier. Because you particularly, I'm not going to pretend I like someone or something. Now I'm in my 50s as much as I would have been more eager to please perhaps in my 20s. So it can be puzzling, and trying to navigate compromise gets harder as you get older. Sometimes in a relationship that started when you're older. I don't know. I have to think about. That's a really good question. I almost don't want to think about that, even though it's a really good question. But it is different. I mean, if you've been with your partner a long time, so you've evolved together. We came into it already evolved, so it's a very different equation. I think more what you're more practical. Sounds so boring about what you need from a partner.
Well, I think the key word there is needed. It's
Yes.
There's a big difference between what you want and what you need.
Yes. Yeah, I think you think about things more. So hopefully you've made maybe a more considered decision as you get older. I mean, is he a good cook? Is he good at mending things? Because I can't. When you do the paperwork, I hate doing. When I was in my 20s, it was just, when are we going to have sex? So it does change. And in the right way, really. That's well, particularly now on hormone therapy. Thank God he can mend things and cook, because sex is of no interest to me whatsoever. So I made the right decision.
Well, hopefully that'll be just a temporary thing. So
I hope so. And for him, because, it's very hard for the partners of people who are going through these illnesses, because they have to deal with it in a different way, and they're you're not in control of your own body when you get something wrong with you, but you are in control of the decisions about what you do to your body. Whereas I think for a partner, it's really hard because they're slightly on the sidelines, yet they've got to support you. They don't really know what's going on in your head. And everyone always asks them how you are rather than how they are. It's really important to think about those who are partnered to people who are ill, because it can be really tough on them, actually.
When I first met David, and I've been HIV positive for about 40 years.
Yeah.
But I remember one of the things, and David had a partner who passed away from AIDS in the late 80s. And imagine having AIDS in Oklahoma in the late 80s. So basically, Richard, his late partner, went through hell, but so did he. But so did David, because nobody would take care of this guy, and he was stuck being alone. But after Richard had passed away, he made a promise to himself that he would, he wasn't going to ever have a relationship again with anyone who was positive.
Right.
As somebody who is positive, I got so tired of trying to explain everything to people who are negative.
Yeah.
And because what to go through, that I just made myself a promise I was never going to be with anybody who was negative. And of course, here we go. But the funny thing is, I remember once when when we were talking about it, and I said to David, look, it's not your problem, it's mine. And his response was, without missing a beat, for a smart guy, that may be the dumbest thing you have ever said.
Love David.
He said, you really think you're gonna go through this in a vacuum, that no one else is going to be affected but you. He said, if you don't let me in, I'm standing right here and I ain't going nowhere. And I think, and look, and throughout, I don't want to talk about. I'll talk about what I've gone through somewhere later. But yes, over the last 5 years, I've had 30 operations and procedures. And yes, and everybody does. Everybody runs to you and say, how are you? How are you doing? But the other person standing on the side, the level of responsibility that they have to take over, but not just doing things that you can't do, but this is with the pills you swallow, and so your mood shifts, your exhaustion, you get cranky, you lose patience. It's weird to feel compromised every single day, but that's part of what it is, I guess, to what I call new age. And it's just, it always makes me laugh when I hear about people, when I get older, I can take it easy. I think it's so much harder here. It's so much, because I think it was what you said before. When you're young, you don't really think.
No, exactly. And when you get older, you do, and it can be exhausting, and and everything goes so quickly. And I love things going quickly, but there was someone who was quoting Noel Coward, who said, the older you get, it seems like you're having breakfast every 30 minutes because everything goes so quickly. So it is busy.
Look, I thought we just took down the Christmas tree back about a month ago, and it's going up in 2 weeks.
I love it when your Christmas tree goes up. I'm excited for that.
It's impressive.
It's a moment.
So going forward for you, you still got the hormone therapy, and of course, I pray it all comes out great.
Thank you.
But going forward, how do you sort of see your next path? I know you're not, magazines have self-immolated, and what are your goals now? What are your goals now for next?
I think I want to do more writing. The thing I have done a lot of over the last couple of years, because it's easy to do from home, is writing, and I've really, really enjoyed it. And I've always wanted to do books, and I did one not very good book, but it was fine. But I want to do more books, and I just want to.
Which one, Vainglorious?
Yeah.
I liked it.
Thank you.
I read it.
I think you were the only person who bought it, and that was very sweet of you. But available in all good charity shops. But I want to do more writing, and there's a little businesses we run at home, the property business. So I really enjoy that bit, and just being creative and being a bit more. I think as you get older, you maybe sometimes you get cranky, but I think you get nicer, you get more considerate, you get wiser, you understand what people are going through more. And if you can, as you do with this podcast, if you can share sort of wisdom, insights, it's a really nice, rewarding, good thing to do. And a cliche, live every life at the moment, because you never know how long you've got, but literally that's why we called the podcast out, how long you've got. And that doesn't worry me. You know what? As long as I think, well, sometimes it's quite useful to write your own epitaph, which I don't find at all depressing. And you think, what do I want to say on my gravestone? I don't want a gravestone, but if I had one, what would I want to say on it? And I'm going to make sure that I make that be true. So far, if I was writing my gravestone now, I would say I had a lovely time, and I intend to keep that true.
On my gravestone, I always imagine it's going to say, and he still never saw cats.
I would take photographs of that gravestone if I saw it. But I think it's really important to, you know what, we both have writing backgrounds as part of our careers, and we think in headlines, don't we? And sometimes it's useful to think of your life as a headline. And then you write the piece, you live the story that will get the headline that you want. And I find that quite useful.
Do you consider yourself a happy grown-up?
I do. Despite all what's going on, as I said earlier, I've seen such wonderful things in humankind that aren't always easy to see when you read the news and see what's happening. So I am sometimes furious, but that's part of being happy, if you see what I mean. You can't be on one level the whole time. I'm happy to be the age I am. I feel grateful to be the age I am.
Thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you, Hal. Thank you so much for having me on it.
Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of The Happy Grown-Up. And if you want to hear more about all the ways you can be inspired to be new aging, whether it's self-care, travel, relationships, health, creating a next act, dealing with challenges, finding romance, or just getting off on that special person you see in the mirror, please subscribe to our newsletter at thehappygrownup.com. It is such a gift to be all grown up these days, and it sure as hell beats the alternative. You can worry, but be happy.